as recording has started. Sir Dubey sir, you can unmute and say.
Okay, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure to be back again this Sunday. And I want to extend a very warm welcome to Sri Harsha Tankha ji, who is known to all of us and doesn't need any introduction anywhere in the Krishnamurti circle. But for those of us who are new to the talks being organized by the JK Study Circle Indore, Sri Tankha was born in Dehradun, India, where he went to school, and then he had his university education in England and USA. He joined the Barkwood Park School, England in 1973 and worked there for 37 years. 12 of those were there while Krishnaji was alive, and he was a director of the school and later a director of the foundation. He continues to be a member of the Krishnamurti Foundation Trust, the International Krishnamurti Foundation, which covers all countries not covered by the Indian, US, and the Spanish foundations. He has worked on several projects to do with the teachings and published digital collections and indexes of the recordings. He also worked closely with Dr. David Bohm, especially on dialogue. And we are very happy that Harshji is with us today, and he'll be talking on death and love. With these words, may I request Harshji to please begin your talk, and after the talk is over, the floor is open for people to ask questions. So over to you, Harshji. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dubey ji. I think I said in an earlier talk, why don't we talk about things like death and love? And I think your response to that was to ask me to talk about it. And you sent me a very interesting quote of Krishnamurti, which I will read out to you. There is no profit in knowing death, but strangely, death and love always go together. They're never separate. You can't love without death. You can't embrace without death being there. Where love is, there is also death. They are inseparable. Krishnaji wrote this in his notebook. So, very strange statement, very challenging. Not the way we think about death and love at all, that they're inseparable. So, I would like to talk about this, but before I talk about this, I want to say I'll break a little bit with tradition and say something about myself. I'm going to do this because it's relevant to the way that I want to approach this talk. I've, as the introduction said, worked a lot with Krishnamurti, and I knew him personally. And I was trying to think, I must have been in well over 1,000, if not 2,000 meetings with Krishnamurti. I've produced the collected works of Krishnamurti and I've written summaries. So I have actually been through most of the text of his work. At this moment, I have on my computer the text of virtually maybe 95% of everything that has ever been published or written. I have it here because I'm working on it still. And I am writing programs that can search through this efficiently. So sometimes because of this, sometimes I may come across as an expert. And in some ways, I have a lot of knowledge about what Krishnamurti said. And I can offer that. I think that is one thing I can offer this group, that sometimes I can say quickly, well, he said this, or he didn't say this. And But we all know that this is not about knowledge, particularly if you're talking about love. You're not going to find love in a book. And if you say, I know what love is, that's a very, very strong statement to make. I'm not sure any of us is willing to make such a strong statement. So when I do quote Krishnamurti and other people quote Krishnamurti, I want to say, what is my relationship to that? What is our relationship to that? I view Krishnamurti as a friend, and that was also my relationship with him. A friend whom I respect enormously. Right? I think another factor which is relevant is that I think most of you are only familiar with what the books and the videotapes and the audio tapes that are available say. And they are only part of what Krishnamurti said. And they're mostly in the context of public talks, public question answer sessions, some writings. But people who were around him, he talked about all kinds of things, and including personal things. I mean, just to say, you know, when my marriage was breaking up, I talked about it with him. So that kind of thing is not available and will never be available to everybody. So that aspect of Krishnamurti as just another person is, we forget when he's sitting on a platform that he is just somebody speaking to us. But he's a friend I respect. And respect means, it comes from the word respect. And spect has the same meaning as spectacles, inspect, to look at something. And respect means to look again. So when I say I respect Krishnamurti, I mean that, just that. Not that I treat him as authority. So when I quote anything or anybody quotes anything, I don't see that as true. It's not gospel. It's not, though it carries the ring of truth with it, because he is really looking at the truth, but it's an invitation to look again. See, if somebody else tells me, hey, you're doing something wrong, I may say to them, ignore them. Or I may say, who are you to tell me that I'm doing something wrong? But if I respect somebody and they tell me, you're doing something wrong, then I will look again and see, am I doing something wrong? But it's for me to see what it is. And so I just want to make this point that that is in what we're going to say in a dialogue. We can view Krishnamurti as one more person who's sitting there with us, who from time to time, through our quotations, makes comments as well about what we are interested in. But the inquiry is ours. We are a group who is questioning, who's inquiring into truth. And what matters is not to take what he says as an authority, but he has something to add too, to our own inquiry. And so when a quotation like this one that I just read out comes then it sounds strange at first, but let's look at it. Let's try and see what we make of this. Why is he saying that love and death are inseparable? You cannot have one without the other. So now in this too, another aspect about this, usually people talk about what they know. And I think that's a tendency even in the talks in this group. People talk about what they know. But the real stuff of inquiry and questioning is to go into what you don't know, is to try and discover what you don't know. Maybe you have to start with what you know, but soon you will come to, or hopefully come to things that you don't know. So how do we answer questions that we don't know? See, do we turn to the Vedas, or do we turn to the Bible or the Quran, or do we turn to knowledge, or do we turn to experts, or do we, or what? Or people who have experience of all of this? That is, so I think it's fairly clear that that is not, if we have been listening to Krishnamurti and reading the books, then by now we should have a clear sense that we don't turn to knowledge and experience, or other people's knowledge and experience for the answers to these questions. I thought that I would just tell you a little anecdote at this point, just to see Krishnamurti's view of it. You know Mark Lee, because Mark Lee has spoken to this group before. Mark Lee and I were in San Francisco, and we went to Hayward College, where they were teaching a course in Krishnamurti, a university course in Krishnamurti. So Krishnamurti was very interested in this. He was interested that there was someone teaching a course about his teachings. And we went and spoke with the students. Now that course had an examination paper. It was a proper university course, very knowledgeable. And the students at the end of it were supposed to answer questions, and they would be graded accordingly. So we showed Krishna, this exam paper to Krishnamurti, Krishnaji, and Krishnaji looked at it and said, and he smiled and he said, you know something, I don't think I would pass this exam. So, because he spoke from observation, and a lot of the time he wouldn't remember what he had said. And so he couldn't answer those questions about what he had said. So I'm just saying this to underline the fact that it's not knowledge of Krishnamurti, or it's knowledge of what love is, or it's knowledge of what death is that we are turning to today. It's very clear that the central question of the teachings and of living the teachings and making them real in our lives is observation. It's our observation, each of us. And that we are, and that is, so this is my sense of dialogue, that we are sitting around and we're looking at this question of love and death, and whether it's a question. We shouldn't take Krishnamurti's word for granted, but we respect him. So we are looking at love and death. Are they connected? And I'm going to say some things really to start off. And I'm going to start with what I think is already in our consciousness about love. I think all of us have some sense of love. We certainly use the word. It's the whole world uses the word all the time, every day. It's everywhere. People say, I love my son, I love my family. Or people say, I love you. And in the US, I mean, if you, every morning, the husband, as he goes off to work, will say to his wife, I love you. And then at night, and to their children, if they go to school, they say, I love you. And if they don't, then they begin to feel that they're not loved. So all the time, we're talking about love. But what are we talking about when we say, I love you? So generally, what you will just realize as I continue is that I will raise a lot of questions, not so many answers. I think that's the purpose of dialogue, that it raises questions and brings to the forefront questions which stay with one. You know, not questions with answers. These are not questions with answers. So if we ask, what is love? It's a question that sticks in our mind. It stays as a question, but a question that informs our observation. So as we are looking at around us, at the world and at people and what's going on, as we look and we listen to all the poetry and the songs that have been written about love and the stories, the love stories, and all the sayings and things that people say about love, this question remains, what are we talking about? What is, husband says to his wife, I love you. What does he mean? And as we observe, we begin to see. So I thought that I would just make some observations about love. Any of us could make these observations, but I'll just put them together. I mean, we know of all kinds of things we call love. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, a mother's love, that's the purest kind of love. The love that a mother has for their child. And she told me a story. It's a story I think some of you may know. It's an Indian story about how there's a mother who loves her son dearly and the son loves his mother. He grows up, he gets married, and his wife is very jealous of the love that the son has for his wife. And she says, you love your mother more than you love me. He says, no, I love you too. And she says, well, if you really love me, you will do this. So he does those things, difficult things to do, but she's not satisfied. Finally, she says, if you love me, then you will tear out your mother's heart and bring it to me. So he goes, he kills his mother, tears her heart out, and is taking it back to his wife. When he falls, trips and falls, and his mother's heart falls out of his hands. And then the mother's heart says, you know the story, son, are you okay? Are you hurt? So obviously the story is about some supreme kind of love that mother had. But it's also interesting that this story says that a mother's love is uncritical. And we see that a mother often doesn't. For a mother, the child is the most wonderful thing and can do no wrong. And a mother's love is often uncritical. So I'm just exploring the kinds of love and what we consider to be love. So, but yet, if you have the love between two friends or brothers or brother and sister or something, that the love between friends is critical. It says if I love my friend, then if he's doing something not right or he's making a mistake, I will say, hey, that's not right. It would be part of my love for my friend that I help him out when he's not doing something right. Even stop him sometimes from doing something that's not right. So I'm just exploring. Is love uncritical? Or is love critical? Is what I think these are questions for all of us to answer. How do we view love? What is our view of love? See, then there is romantic love, right? And we all know about romantic love. So there's of course the element of sexual desire and pleasure in romantic love. So is it about pleasure? Is love about pleasure? I mean, for a lot of people it is. I love you because you make me feel good, or you make me feel good about myself. So people say that. People say, I love you because of the joy you bring to me, right? And when that is removed, I feel terrible because you no longer love me, or you no longer give me pleasure, or as we get old and it becomes more problematic, and then that love dies, so that love fades away. So that's another kind of love that seems to be something that we think of as love, but that's a question. Is love about pleasure? And is love, and yet, or is love limited? Is it like this? I fall in love, I fall out of love. I love you until you do something that upsets me, then I don't love you anymore. All that is in our consciousness. If we explore our consciousness, we'll find that that is what humanity has considered. And there are many other aspects. People can join into all of that. Then there's love of country, or love of a group, or love of family, maybe, And this love seems to be based on identification. We seem to love things because we identify with them. We say, I'm Indian, or I say, this is my family, or this is my clan or group, or this is love based on the sense of identity and the sense of security that I get from belonging to a group. And I love this group and I'll do anything for them. But I love my family and you love your family. And when we come into any friction between us, then there's conflict. So it's pretty clear that very often this kind of love that is based on identification and security leads to conflict. And surely love isn't about conflict. Love shouldn't lead to conflict. So I think what we begin to see is that what we accept in everyday life as love is really quite limited. I mean, I could go on. Is love attachment? Many people think of it as attachment, husband and wife, very attached to each other. One of them dies, the other can't live without them, So is that love, maybe all these things are somewhat or some reflection of love. I don't know. As I say, I'm really putting questions that I hope will resonate with everybody. So is that, and is love exclusive? I love you, but I don't love other people. Or once you love me, you can't love anybody else. These are all some notions of love, which, as we examine them, turn out to be, at least in my view, they begin to look rather limited. But yet, there is also another sense we have of it. The sense that somehow love will solve all the problems of relationship. That love is the most important thing. There are songs and sayings, all you need is love. Love conquers all. And so on. So that's another thought we have. And so are these just ideals? Are they just ideas? We find that we are in imperfect relationships, and then we dream of some kind of ideal relationship which has no conflict in it. Is that just a projection onto, is that what we are doing? We are projecting from what is not right or healthy in our relationship, and then we are projecting it to say, oh, there should be an ideal relationship, one without conflict. And that if we loved enough, or if we loved deeply enough, then our relationships will be without conflict. And if they are with conflict, that means that I really don't know how to love enough. Or okay, I know a little bit how to love, but not enough. I must learn more about love. So is love like that? We learn how to love better and more and more and more until we reach some kind of universal, all-embracing, eternal love. All these things that I'm talking about are notions that are in our minds. I'm sure you're familiar with all of them. So the question I'm asking is this what love is? What we have in our minds? Is this what love is? So now, pretty much we also know that. So if we look at all of this, one thing is in common in all these notions of love, all these different ways that we look at love. One thing is in common. And that is that any of this, whether it's love of country, love between man and woman, or mother for a son, or anything, means that you put something else as more important than yourself. So that seems to be the common thread that runs through all our notions of love. That there is a love that is not about myself. It's not about my fulfillment or my pleasure or whether I like somebody and all of that. It is about considering the other before I consider myself, beyond myself, not myself. So And those notions are around, so much so that we are ready. We are ready to die for love of another. There are the things like greater love hath no man that he give his life for another. So that is, or people who are ready to die for an idea, or something that they consider important, or the nation, they consider their nation, which means all of us, before they consider themselves. So, this would seem to be the central feature of what love is about. That it is about that we have all our daily concerns, and some of them, obviously, you have to look after yourself, keep yourself healthy, all of that. Make sure that you are properly fed, do some work that gets you money, support your family, support all of that. But those are essentially about oneself, or about the self. Whether the self is a large self, I include myself, my family in myself, or I include my community in myself, or even I identify myself with my nation. These are concerns about the self. So but this also gives us a clue, I think. It gives us a clue as to why Krishnamurti is saying that death and love go together. So to now talk about the self, about what might be beyond the self, whether there is something that is not of the self. So one of the things Krishnaji has said at times is that we need to understand ourselves, and we need to understand ourselves by observation, that we are looking at ourselves, and that is how we understand not just personal self, but the whole movement of the self. And that we have a habit of fragmenting the self, that we see ourselves, this is me, and this is not me. I see that people, and they're behaving in a certain way, and they're very angry, say, or violent. And I say, I'm not angry, I'm not violent, because I don't see the roots of violence in myself. So we like to separate ourselves out from the whole of the self. And the challenge that Krishnaji puts us is to see the whole of ourselves, to see everything in ourselves. So at times he has asked us, how can you focus on what the whole of the self is? And he suggests that we look at death and we ask ourselves this question: what is it that dies? What is it that comes to an end? Obviously the physical body, but beyond that, all our desires, all our plans, all our ideas about people, all our habits, all our, that whole thing that dies is the self. Even what we think about other people, all the anger and violence which we see, which is in our consciousness, but we don't attribute it to ourselves, we attribute it to other people. All that also comes to an end. So this is a question he has asked, not over here. Can you die to the self before your physical death? While still alive, can you die to the self? Can the ending of the self come before physical death? Which means looking very closely at what it is that dies and see whether that, this whole movement of the self, can stop before and one continues to live. Because if we really want to discover what is not of the self, of a love that is not of the self, then that is what is necessary, the death of the self. And that is why he says love and death are not separate. For to have, in a way, you must die if you are to love. Or you must understand what death is, to love. And that's the challenge that he puts to all of us. And I think that is, so I think that's probably all I can say at the moment. But I'm just saying this as an observation, looking at the world, looking at love, looking at death, looking at what Krishnamurti has said. This is an observation that I'm offering you. And I would suggest, and as I said before, I'm not an expert. I'm just a person looking at these things. And any and all of you are in a position to do the same. And I would suggest, don't ask me to explain myself. It's not so important, even if you didn't fully understand what I said. But what is my sense of what a dialogue is, that everybody can say what they see. And maybe as everybody, and as we're all looking at this question of love and death, and we begin to see it from different windows, as it were, windows that are looking on at the whole of life, then we begin to develop an understanding and a communication. I don't know what, but I know this is difficult because it means looking and trying to put out there things that are deep, which are not things you talk about every day. And it's also difficult because we are not used to talking about, first looking at the whole of our consciousness and then talking about things that run deep or that we feel deeply. And but I think it's worth making the effort. So I request everybody, anybody who wishes to add something to this question of love and death. It could be very different from what I'm saying. I don't know, in fact, it's good. The situation is like, you all know the story of the 7 blind men who saw the elephant, you know, and one of them says it's like a tree because he feels its legs, and another says it's like a snake because he feels its trunk, and another says it's like a wall because he feels the side. But then slowly a picture emerges. If they all say what they say, a picture emerges of what it is. So I think I turn it over to everybody else.
I think Harshad ji wants to say something, then I also want to say something. Yes, Harshad bhai, please.
Okay. Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Harsh. I listen very well. This topic reminds me of my visit to Brookwood in 1989. I had stayed there for 6 months, and one French girl, she recited a poem. It was originally in French language, but it was translated in English, and it is in the question answer form. So the poem starts, what do you love most, extraordinary stranger? Do you love your mother or father or brother or sister? And the man says, I have no father, no mother, no brother, no sister. Then do you love your country? Then this man says, I don't know where it is. Then do you love gold? I hate gold as you hate God. Then what do you love most, oh extraordinary stranger? And the man says, I love the clouds going over there. So a man who really loves the cloud, nature, surely I think it must be there. You don't get anything from the cloud by loving. So when a person has no sense of self, can love, whether it's a nature or other human beings. And it is not just true for few people. When I wrote a letter to Krishna ji when I decided to join Rishi Valley School, and I wrote that when I was in Ojai, and I wrote to Krishna ji, it came out very spontaneously. I wrote that I would like to teach about love, beauty, and life to students of your school, but I don't know whether this can be taught, but I can teach physics and mathematics, for which I am very much qualified. So after I joining Rishi Valley, every time I had to speak in the school assembly, my topic was always love, beauty, and life, because I never talked about science, engineering, though that was my profession. But I feel much more spontaneous and energetic when I have to speak about what I feel very deeply and what I see. There was one sentence of Krishnaji which kept on thinking me for several years, which was love in relationship is a purifying process as it reveals the ways of the self. Without this revelation, relationship has very little significance. So generally, when we get very much attached to somebody, then that attachment may bring fear, anger, jealousy, and all these feelings were coming in my relationship with somebody, a American woman, American girl. And then this sentence always reminded me this is not love, because love is a purifying process when it makes you look at yourself as you are. And in that, there is honesty and real learning. And reminds me of two friends who came to Krishnaji, and they had discussed a lot about love, what love is. And one of them told Krishnaji that the more we have discussed about love, the clearer it has become. And Krishnaji asks, has love become clear, or what you think about it? So one can know everything about what love should be and what it is not, but that is not love. Thinking about love is not love. Just like thinking or talking about meditation is not meditation. I feel that love is the greatest treasure human beings can have, and that is possible only when there is no sense of self. That means the mind is open to nature, to everything, and everything is seen very, very clearly without likes and dislikes and all that thing. And many people in the past, I feel that they had come to such a love. Like Mirabai, though she said, Ram Ratan Dhan Payo, Kharche na Kute, Chor na Lute, Din Din Badhat Savayo. So a person who has really found this kind of love, he will never feel lonely. And every day it will be a beautiful day. And that feeling of love increases with time, with age. Normally, our love, what we call love, which is attachment, it remains for few years, and person can get married and then loses the interest in wife and search for something else. But this kind of love, which comes from real understanding of oneself, from wisdom, from observation, it doesn't die. That love is understanding. And there is a very beautiful chapter, Love is Understanding, in the biography of Buddha, where Buddha talks with the king. And slowly, Buddha takes the king to understand that real love is not a desire, not for family, not for anyone. It is love which is a feeling which comes out of freedom. So love and freedom, they are same. And that freedom means that there is no sense of self, a death, psychological death. It reminds me of a story of Romeo and Juliet, and it is considered to be a great love story. But when Romeo comes to know that Juliet has died, he commits suicide, and then Juliet also commits suicide. Both of them dies at a very young age because they were very deeply attached to each other, and they thought that without that other person, life is meaningless. So it was death, physical death, and it was a relationship which was attachment. So the real uh, love, one can never commit suicide because that love is not for somebody. It is a sense of feeling, living every day fresh. So I have said enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. Thank you.
Hmm.
Uh, Before I give it to Arun ji, I want to make an observation, and Harsh ji may kindly respond to this. You know, love is a word which has so many connotations. So it's, as Harshad bhai said, it's very difficult to define what is love. And one thing which I hear quite often is that I love ice cream. That is also a kind of love. You know, when our taste buds get satisfied. And as we all know, perhaps, that love is a fragmentation of our consciousness, like fear is. And I can see it quite clearly when I, you know, look deeply that love and fear, they go together. But would you clarify when you say that love and death are also good, they go together or they are same? It must be the psychological death, the ending of self, not the physical body. So this is my question. Thank you.
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
I think I said that. I think I said that. I think the first thing I want to say is that we have a tendency to answer things that, as Harshad ji said, and you're saying as well, we develop an idea of what this love is. And it's this idea is of they fell in love and they lived happily ever after. That somehow this love is of that nature. But that I would suggest is an ideal of love that we have created. Seeing that our present situation is bereft of that much love, we create an ideal. And I think that ideal is essentially at the basic of romantic love. And you will notice stories of romantic love end in two ways. One way is tragedy, like Romeo and Juliet, because it's some kind of ideal which is actually unattainable because it's an ideal, right? And the other is they lived happily ever after, which is a fairy tale. That is how fairy tales end. It is not a description of reality. The description of reality is what we actually experience in our lives of the problems of relationship. And yes, of course, it is psychological death. And that death is not associated. That love is not associated with fear. That ordinary love, that our everyday idea of love, is connected with the idea of separation, of loss, and that makes us fear what will happen if my beloved person dies, or I love my son and then he leaves me and goes away, so then, or gets killed somewhere. What's the fear of that, So the fear of loss, the fear of separation are always there with the kind of love that is attachment and that is fulfillment, or which involves some. So the ordinary view of love has fear, but I think the thing about love that Krishnamurti is talking about is that it's firstly, it's in the present. It's not that I will attain it. It's not that I'm working towards it. It's not that I will one day find it or fall in love. It's in the present. It's there. Anytime we can look beyond the self. It may even be there when special moments, for some reason or the other, the self falls quiet. And I think all of us experience that. It could be in the presence of beauty or something reduces that quality. So I think we can, but it's not something that we can strive for, or it's not something that we can reach. And it's always in the present. It's always not, and it has nothing to do with fear. It has.
Thank you, Harji. Thank you. Arun ji, Mr. Arun Partha, please ask a question.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Mine is actually a very simple question, more of a doubt. Basically, see, generally we associate, I mean, in our discussions, we associate about speaking about love, which is attributed more towards the thought level and all that. But if you look at it in the outside world, we just see that it is more, love has an attribute more towards the heart. Since we can change, since we can sense some kind of changes in the rhythms and patterns and all that, and normally we say that the heart pumps hard and all that, and so I just wanted to know, like, I mean, even we see a lot of heart symbols, and they associate more towards the heart side. So I just wanted to know what is the how does these two get linked up, and is that heart itself got a different kind of communication? Thank you, sir.
Harshi,
Would you like to answer that question yourself?
Arun, would you like to answer this? I think he's not there.
No, sir. 1 second. Actually, I just put a question. That's why I asked the beginning. It was a very simple question. It was more of a doubt. So, because I mean, here I see a lot of, and you all are very senior people. So I just got the doubt, sir. So I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Harshji, there is a...
You will notice I did not mention thought once in my talk.
Yes, you did not. There is a question and comment from Shakti ji from Rajghat. He says, would you say something about simple affection? Has it got some remote connection with love? Because the love that Kate talks about seems so far away, something mystic. Love is not remembrance. So this is his question. Harshi.
If you look at the meaning of the word affection, it comes from affect. And affect means to be affected by something. There's something. So when you see somebody's, it's about feeling. It's about, say you see somebody in a situation and you feel it causes you to feel something for it, right? And another aspect of affection, another meaning of affection is to move towards. So maybe you see somebody having a young person, say, and you feel like moving towards them. And it's the affirmation of, you're really saying you feel for them. You're really saying what they are, what they affects you, and you're not making a separation between you and them. So, and when we, this is my sense of what you call simple affection. I think it's a very good question. That there are moments that we feel this thing, an empathy, moving towards somebody. And that is, at that time, a feeling of no separation. It's a feeling of being with them. It's a feeling of, if they're having difficulties, that's part of it. You respond to that, whatever difficulty they're having. Or their joy, you participate in their joy too, you know. It's this. So I think it is in that sense that there is no sense of separation. It is related to love. I know that the other, it is an expression of love. It's in the immediacy of So yeah, it's born from the same parents.
Okay, thank you, Harshi. I think we have three people who have raised their hand. I'll start with Ravi from Uttarkashi. Ravi, please unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is Ravi from Uttarkashi, Gunda. I don't have a question because getting the answer related to spirituality and love will be borrowed answer, and I do not believe in those things. I think love is one of the most complicated after spirituality to understand it, whether it was a love, attraction, or affection, or something else. So for me, love was like if if you know that you are in love. For me, it was not love. When the love is passed away, had gone, and you realize that you were in love, that was love. And for somebody's sister or brother or parents have died, and you feel you have the memories of them, and you feel crying for them, but whether it is it love or some attachment, I do not know, because the person has gone and you are living in those memory. So whether it's memory, affection, attachment, or something else. The same way, K is talking about something as compassionate love, which is comes from the eternity, which I never experienced or I do not know. And people are talking about the Julia, that two lovers, which they after once passed away or killed, the other kills himself or herself. He Ranja was that two couple, and the Mirabai. These three stories are quite different. When the person has gone, you kill yourself. So is it attachment or love? That emptiness or aloneness or loneliness? The Mirabai was living without Krishna. The Krishna had passed away centuries ago, but she was in love with that person. So what kind of love? What was it? It was some emptiness. She was living in that emptiness and feeling that elated or loved with that Krishna, that memory or some image or incarnation or something, I don't know. Same way Ramakrishna Paramhans was in love with that deity. So was it at the end of that thing, Totapuri had come and had said that you have to get out of that image. So all these are love, affection, attachment, or imagination. I do not know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. We'll go
Can
to
I?
Anandji. You want to say something, Harshji? Yes, please.
I just wanted to add something which I was thinking to saying before. Another anecdote, but it illustrates something. It may seem that we're always talking in terms of thought, but understanding the self involves exploring feelings, because feelings are very much part of our being as well, and of our consciousness. And for myself, I generally explore feelings through music. And so this is about Krishna ji and musicians. And there was a quite well-known singer called Lakshmi Shankar. Some of you may have heard of her. And she was singing for Krishnamurti. A small group. We were in Vasant Vihar, and she came to sing. And what she sang brings me in mind of Sufism, because Sufism is kind of the religion of love. And Sufism speaks of the other, something beyond the self, as the beloved. So when they are talking about the beloved, they mean this thing that is beyond the self. They're not calling it God, they're not calling it, they're generally talking about the beloved. And she sang this song. Now, listening to a musician with Krishnamurti was a total event, an experience, because his level of attention is so great. Musicians love to sing to him because they always sang better, because he was listening so intently. And that listening somehow made them listen to themselves better. And it was quite different listening to a musician with Krishnamurti present. So she was singing this song, and it's a song to her beloved. And it alternated between singing about the beloved as her lover, her earthly lover, and her beloved as the supreme entity that is. But the whole point of the song, and it was like almost like a discussion or dissertation, was that there is no great difference between those two. That if I love you, then to love you, it's the universal, it's the whole in you, it's that I love. It's, I think in India, we would say it's the divine in you that I love. And that is so I don't know how to say it in Krishnamurti terms, but I'm just saying that is what the song was about. That even personal love, to be loved, has to somehow include and recognize this greater love. Without
Thank you, Harshi. Thank you. I think we have Anand ji and then Clemice, then three more people. Anand ji, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So when I say this is what K is saying, can I look, sir, can I understand, sir, that I'm making K an authority? It is very subtle. It's very difficult for most of us, I mean, to speak on any of these things without saying K says this or K does not say this. That is one. Two, sir, how do I understand love when I don't know what suffering means? No, suffering is the summation of energy, and I never remain with it. I always move away from that. When I move away from that, I mean, I may have pick some entertainment or something like that, go for a football match or something. So I escape from it, which again, I don't see it as dissipation of energy. Now, without understanding suffering, I mean, how can I understand what love is? Because out of suffering, there's passion, and out of that passion is compassion and love. So we talk about love, and love is one of the most abused words. Once again, everyone defines it. It has got so many meanings. I mean, I say love of God, I say love of my house, love of my dog, love of my wife, love of my son, love of my friend. I mean, it is so widely abused. I mean, I'm trying to understand. Again, I'm questioning, sir. I live in a world of reality. Can I understand that which is not of it? Is a question, sir. Over, sir.
Harshi, you are muted. Harshi, you are muted. Yeah, unmuted.
I'll put it very simply, you can't understand love. I doubt anybody can understand love. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist in your life.
Thank you, Harshi. I think these are questions, Anandji, one can answer oneself, because I don't know if there is any answer to these questions. Clemice, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everybody. I just want to say one thing that I feel is very interesting. Krishnamurti said, love is there when the I is not. Then we make it a very difficult and complicated thing, and then we think, oh my God, this is not for me, such a faraway thing. Really, it is not for me, it is not for me, but that doesn't mean it is never there at all, that it never happened, and that feeling never entered into my life. So very, very simple things. Many times there is, he also said that when we watch the sunset or the sunrise or something beautiful, there is this absence of the me. There is no feeling, no sense. There is only the beauty of that moment and so on. So at that moment, when you see something like that, it can be a person, you can see a singer singing or somebody performing, or even just somebody just walking or saying something or just standing, whatever. And you have that feeling, that deep feeling of beauty and just that. So it may not be so complicated as we feel. And I feel that we are all wishing for this big thing that we create in our mind. That may be love. It is such a big thing and will solve all the problems or all that. So it does solve all the problems, of course, but it may not be so difficult or so distant as we may put it. So my feeling is that too much thinking also complicates things.
Yes.
So I think just allow life to happen and just see what happens. This feeling may be there more often than we imagine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Clemice. We'll go to Mr. Dinesh Waghmare and then Mr. Gopal and then Mr. Sharma. Dinesh ji, please go ahead.
Sir, in my views, the pure love or love per se is the love inherited in our existence. It is the existential love. Yes, it can manifest in relationship through goodness or in goodness. We only know the love of in relationship and not the pure actual love or pure love. Again, this death of self is also, in my views, a wrong notion, because that practically means no moment of self. Death of self practically means no moment of self, which is an absurd thing. I think, yes, there can be a freedom from the self, but not the death of self. This is what I think. Thank you. I would like to Harsha Tankha to comment on this.
In a way, I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, but I think that the things that we are talking about are very difficult to talk about, because they're not in the realm of things that are easily defined. Love or beauty or compassion, they are all difficult to talk about. So when we are talking about them, we are actually using words in a different way, with a different intention, not using words as their dictionary definition, but using words as pointers, more like a poet uses words, that he uses the words to create a sense or to create a feeling. So if you say death of self, that is actually a kind of a question. It's not a definition, or you don't have to stick to the dictionary definition of death. It's kind of a pointer. And it actually, my response to it, after in general response to such statements by Krishnamurti or other people, is that, so what is it? What is being called death over here? That's a very interesting question. What does it mean to end the self? Does it mean that the brain has stopped as you were functioning? Does it mean that surely if I'm speaking, does it mean I can't speak because I'm not using my memory anymore? Obviously not. Don't I eat, and don't I have to go out, cook something? Don't I use my brain? Is that not looking after myself? So it can't mean that all that activity is completely gone. So it must mean more than that. So then it becomes an inquiry. A statement like the death of the self or the ending of the self, or whichever you want to put it, is actually a process. It's not like we normally use words to talk about. It's a different way of using words. It produces a process, so that it sets off this question, which is what I said at the beginning. My aim here is to set off these questions. So my mind ends up asking, as a moment-to-moment question in my life, what is the ending of the self? Obviously not killing myself, obviously not stopping to talk or eat food. You know, what does it mean? So what is it that has to end? What exactly has to end? And that may bring each of us to something that we seek for ourselves. We don't have to define it. We may never be able to define it to somebody else. And as Clemice was saying, it happens. It's not that we don't know it, but when it does, if you try and capture it, you know, you can't take a photograph of it. You can't bring it into words even, very difficult to talk about, except in this way of using words as pointers to something that sets off questions in our mind.
Actually, we should explore what is freedom from the self. That's what I think.
We should explore. I think that's a very good thing to explore. Really explore. Yeah. From the point of not knowing. It's, yeah.
Dubey sir, you are unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Okay.
You are muted.
Okay. Thank you. Oopsie. God. 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah. Hello. I hope I'm audible. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. It was wonderful listening to all of you and the various thought-provoking questions which were coming across and things like that. One small question which has been always bothering me, you know, a lot is I have been reading some books. Basically, you could call it spiritual books and things like that. And one of the terms which most of these our sages have been using is that attach, you lose, detach, you gain. So does it mean that attach means, I mean, from the point of view of love, looking at in another way, you know? So is it better not to love so that we gain? This is a question which has been bothering me a lot, and it's open to anybody to help me understand this better. That's all. Thank you so much.
I was waiting for somebody else to respond, but if nobody else will. See, I think it's fairly clear that attachment is not love. What do you mean by attachment? What does it mean to be attached to something? It means that, in very simple words, that if you get separated from them, say by death, or even if they're not there, they start living miles away, then you feel a sense of loss, you feel a pain, you feel a hurt, right? In that process of separation. And it means that you like to do things with them together, you like to be around them, you like, you know, that is what, and that's often considered a good thing. Attachment, a lot of us consider that it's a good thing, but the other thing that attachment does is it creates dependency. And not only does it create dependency, it creates limitation, you know, so that I am limited to things by my attachment to you. Then it also gives rise sometimes to jealousy. You know, if I'm very attached to you and you go off and talk to somebody else and spend time with somebody else, then I feel hurt or jealous or wish you were with me. So attachment is, but still people like attachment because it gives us feeling of security. Somebody is there for me. He is with me. And that is why also when the attachment gets broken, I feel lost and I feel worried because I'm no longer that secure. So attachment isn't the kind of love, because in love there's a lot of freedom. The love that we are talking about, there is a lot of freedom. If you really love me and I love you, then we are not restricting each other. We are not saying you can't talk to so-and-so. We are not worrying about, you can be at the other end of the world. It's not if you need to be. And if you die, I always loved you. That love doesn't go, but you've gone, and that's the fact. But in a very strange way, the love remains. It's not. So there is this attachment isn't love.
दुबे सर आप अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
Mr. Dubey, you are muted.
Attachment is made up of atta care. Atta care means hold on. If you wanted to hold on, you cannot hold on. Nothing you can hold on. No one can hold on you. That's a basic meaning of attachment. That's why attachment turns into grief. That's all.
Okay.
Dubey sir.
Okay, Clemice and then Harishji. Please go ahead.
Okay, see, in this, that we should not be attached, many people jump to detachment, which is, he also asked about that. So, but the case is, detachment is the same thing as attachment. It is just the other side of the same coin. You have gone nowhere. Because when you are detached, means you try to stay away and you create some kind of coldness in your mind, and it is a forced and imposed, it's not a natural thing. So, and I have, just yesterday, we were reading a story with some people here, and the story was about a monk who left, and it was not a nice story because it has everything to do with this detachment, and it shows this coldness, that we create. So can we be not detached, not attached, but can we just love without, because we also feel that love needs expression. We need to express it. We need to do something. We need the person. It also, we feel it has to have an object whom we love. So can we just take away all these ideas of object and these ideas of expression? Because if it is just a state of being. If that is there, it is just a state of being. It needs no expression. It needs no object. So, but for us, it is very difficult because we have this idea of, if I love something or if I love somebody, then I have to possess it. It has to be mine. So that is no love at all. That is, it has everything to do with me. So the story yesterday of the monk was, the monk left his wife, she was pregnant, and after many times he had tried to go to the monastery and he failed, and he came back because of the wife. So finally he saw she was pregnant, and he saw she became fat and all this business. So he felt disgusted, and then he felt, I can leave her, and he went back to the monastery. So I said, wow, very nice. Now she has a child in her womb, and he felt I can live, So he became detached, and he left, and he entered the monastery, and he never came back and all that. So, but the wife cannot walk away from the child now. What will she do? So there is no, what a hard, that you have all these feelings. So the whole thing is always about yourself. If I have attachment, if I miss the person, I go there. If I don't miss the person, I can leave. But what about love? If you love somebody, there is no missing or not missing. There is just the feeling for you care for that person, and you care for yourself. So it's a different view of the whole thing altogether. So I just to say a small, it's a personal thing, but in any case, I have a son, and when I came to India, I have never been away from him, never ever. And when I came to India, that was the most difficult thing for me because, and for him also, of course. And he told me, see, if you stay here, you won't be happy. I know that. And how can I be happy if you are not happy? So you go, and we will be in touch, and everybody will be happy. So like that we are doing. And sometimes I feel guilty, but then I talk to him, and he said nothing like that, because if you are here, I cannot tolerate to see you unhappy. And if you are here, you will be unhappy. I know that. So it has more to, I'm not saying that this is love. I'm just saying that we can live and care for each other without having to be all the time, and leaving space for people to live their lives.
Thank you, Clemice. Thank you. We have the last question now from Harish ji. And then, okay, Mr. Sharma after Harish ji. Yes, Harish ji,
Shall I? Okay. Okay, namaskar. Let me start with one statement I came across decades ago. Love is not a relationship, it is a state of being. A man having this perfume, this fragrance called love, this mystical thing, love, may be in relationship with someone, may not be in relationship with someone. There are no rules governing it. Don't take it as, I'm just making my observation, not that what I am saying carries the weight of truth. So he or she may be in relationship, may not. If he or she happens to be in relationship, and then the other partner may be son, daughter, wife, girlfriend, I love you, he or she may repeat it, I love you too, not necessarily because without it there won't be any love, as a mere gesture of reciprocation. And as we all know, reciprocation is a sign of etiquette. So that's it. Now, I cannot give a better example than a flower in a garden spreading fragrance, and lots of tourists come, they enjoy the fragrance. And the same flower in a jungle which has never been visited by any human being, and that flower will have the same quality of fragrance. So that love is like that. Whether there is someone to receive or not, you can replace flower with a lamp. Lamp will always give light, whether you want to use that light or you don't want to use. That is, like when a man like Krishnaji, when he is challenged, you yourself say that nobody listens to me, nobody has understood a thing. So why do you go on and on? And he said, I suppose out of compassion. So if a man like Krishnamurti cannot help but have this quality of compassion, and love and compassion, to my mind, they are synonyms. Second thing is that a beautiful question was asked about Ramkrish Paramahansa and Mirabai. Bhakti. Let us not confuse bhakti with love. Let me, just a small example. Bhakti is a means to the end, which is love. And look at the statement of Mirabai. When Mirabai underwent her total transformation, she did not say, Payoji maine Krishna Ratan Dhan payo. She said, Payoji maine Ram Ratan Dhan payo. When she was not allowed entry to the temple of Krishna because she was a woman and the rule did not permit, she said, she challenged the priest and she said that you consider yourself man? No, if you are a true lover of Krishna, you have to be a female, regardless of the body. So, Payoji mane Ram Ratan Dhan payo. So, love is the destination. Love, bhakti is a means. So, that is why, Paramhans, he did not get stuck at Kali and all that. And he talked a lot about other things. And about Shakti ji saying affection. In fact, as ordinary human mortals, we can only talk about affection, not about love. Because we cannot invite love. But yes, we can probably cultivate affection as a gesture. And best definition, Harsha Tankha himself said, first others, then myself. I was approached by DPS, DPS Society runs a series of chain of DPS schools, and they have a slogan, service before self. So when they asked me to give some definition, I said, service before self means altruism. And the whole essence of altruism is that the other is more important than myself. But that is also, that may not be true love. And I will discuss that in a jiffy. So affection, simple thing that I care for my wife. I don't want to brag about it, but my wife has one complaint. She would often ask, so what shall we cook? What shall I cook today? And then my reply since 1992 is, whatever is convenient to you. Because whatever you cook, I love to eat. But it may have become habit also. So we can only we can only work at two things. Affection, that is to care about somebody, their convenience, their comfort, their interest, their benefit. And another thing we can work at is dissolution of the self. Then when Krishnaji says, thought denies love, but yet every action must be preceded by some thought. Remember one thing, love would never come from thought, but yes, thought may emerge from love. And any thought emerging from love is not love, is intelligence. And I cannot give a better example than, or one of the examples I can give, like we all know Gandhi epitomized the principle of non-violence. And yet he got a calf killed, shot dead in his ashram. I don't take Gandhi as a spiritually enlightened person, nor do I consider him, he was a confused, unevolved like me. No, I don't jump to any conclusions, but I can give Gandhi the benefit of the doubt. That is intelligence, that this calf is unnecessarily suffering, let her be shot dead. So if we have that love, Harshji has not touched upon it. Maybe in his place, I'm sorry to say this, Harshji, with due apology to you, I would put the title as not love and death, but love and intelligence. Because any love which doesn't have intelligence is mere sentimentality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harishji. Thank you.
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
I could respond very simply. I think you are completely right that what it means for us in practice is the dissolution of the self and the cultivation of affection. As I was saying, affection is, in somewhat limited cases, the removal of feeling that I'm one and I care for and I'm with the person and not separated. So the self is not getting in the way, but it's not a complete dissolution of the self. But the So the central thing is the dissolution of the self. And you want to rename it intelligence. Okay, fine, let's call it intelligence, but love, I'll quote to you once again what was, strangely enough, I know service for self because I was the earliest student of DPS school. And also at Brockwood, kind of the motto of Brockwood was to awaken that intelligence that comes with compassion and love. So those go together. They are really part and parcel of the same thing: intelligence, compassion, and love.
Thank you, Harshji. We'll take the last question now. Mr. Sharma, please mute yourself. Unmute yourself, yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Sharma. As you said earlier, somebody has asked about, I would like to ask about attachments and detachments only, but love is a natural process, universal. And what I would like to say is, if somebody is showing that kind of love, and if the other side or the other people are not in reciprocation of it, what would happen? Can it bring a change if other people, other side or other part of it, they don't reciprocate? We show, but other people, they don't reciprocate. Please answer this question.
Harshji, can I just quote Krishnamurti in a book, The Only Revolution? I think I did it once, I'll repeat it. You know, a gentleman went to Krishnaji and Krishnaji was talking about seeing and listening. He said, see it completely, see it in freedom. That will make changes. Then he said, sir, my mother-in-law, you know, uses foul language against me. Is seeing make her change? He said, just listen to her in freedom. Maybe you will walk out of the meeting, or you will hear her and not react at all. So those are the actions. Why do you want, sir, the other to change? I think we should restrict ourselves to what we are and what we are doing. And let's see what happens to the other person. That's not in our hands. And Harshji can supplement it if he wants to.
Yes, I would say let's see, we have to start with ourselves. And I think a starting point is the recognition that we are actually, I mean, you know, whatever ideas and whatever Krishnamurti may be saying about love and so on, that we are rather confused about love, that we, in our everyday life, do tend to, and if it's not us, it's people around us, and so in our talks, in our everyday use of the word love, we are talking about things, a kind of love which, if seems to make sense in a limited context, but after a while, it also leads to grief and sorrow. So it leaves open the question whether what we are accepting as love isn't really go that deep, and whether there is anything deeper than that. And for that, we have to look at, understand ourselves. And that doesn't mean that love doesn't come into our life at any time. And as I was saying, love is not something, kind of love even that Krishnamurti is talking about, is not something that you strive for. It's always in the present. And one of the things about it is that we might not even notice it. We might not, that it may not leave a mark behind. It may not leave a memory. You know, it's just there. and we are in it. I like the phrase that people are in love, and then you're caught up in your daily life and, it's past. It's something that I've noticed in Brockwood. People who come to Brockwood feel, or did when I was there, they still do, feel an atmosphere there, something undefinable, which affects them strongly. And when you ask yourself, what is it that people at Brockwood are doing? Who is it doing it? Is somebody creating it? It's impossible to discover, because actions that do not arise from the self, they can't be associated with me, with the self. They're not my actions. Anything that is my action is associated with the self. But sometimes I may act through intelligence and not act for myself. But that won't be seen and noticeable as my action, because it wasn't my action. And yet it will help to create this atmosphere that can be felt by others. So love is not of the self. That is really it. So for me to try and make it part of myself, or to aspire to it, is a self-defeating enterprise. It's just something beyond.
Would you please, already 15 minutes, 16 minutes has taken place. Only Pradeep Prakash.
No, I think
making comment. Let him finish the comment, and with love, please finish it. Already 16 minutes has gone.
We will not take any more questions now. We'll close now.
Pradeep Prakash.
I want to thank Harshji for giving his time and covering the whole gamut of love and death beautifully. I think many of us who would have any doubt would have been cleared by now what love is and how it is related to that. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Next announcement.
Yeah, let me do that, please.
Yeah.
Next Sunday, we'll have Miss Jackie McKinley, and to accommodate her time gap, we have kept it at 6 p.m. The next Sunday talks will be at 6 p.m. and the topic is this matter of relationship with each other. So you're all welcome to join. It will be the same link, 6 p.m. next Sunday. Thank you once again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dubey sir. When absence is not felt, love is complete. So let it finish.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.